Dekati kedamaian, pupuk persefahaman dan jauhi perbalahan. Bersama-sama kita memupuk semangat perpaduan. Hindari sebarang tindakan yang boleh mencetuskan provokasi kaum. Raikan hari perayaan di Malaysia bersama-sama dengan mengunjungi antara satu sama lain. Selain mengeratkan silaturahim, masyarakat juga dapat memahami dan menghormati perayaan di Malaysia. Sertai aktiviti kemasyarakatan dan sukan bersama-sama.
Good morning and welcome to Niaga Awani. You're with me, Nina Rosman, and today we're going to celebrate another day, 27 June of International MSMEs Day. Definitely everyone, each of us has a very important role to play to raise public awareness about their contribution in sustainable development and how they play a very critical role in the economic growth, especially in the global. So definitely we want to reflect back. It's the anniversary of the MSMEs today. So we want to reflect back on the initiative of Belanjawan 2023 that was presented by the government, few initiatives in order to support the local SMEs with few initiatives that was presented in Belanjawan 2023. And all the initiatives that were presented is to empower local SMEs, definitely. So definitely, I will not waste any more time. I will welcome you, our guest, Datuk David Gurupatam, the Industries Unite co-founder, is here with us in the studio. I want to say, Datuk, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Definitely. So today is definitely a day to celebrate, another year to celebrate, yes. And all of us, including not the SMEs, have to be a part to celebrate their contribution till today. So maybe we can start off Belanjawan 2023. The question here today, we want to see, have all the SMEs has seized the opportunities, the growth, and even the recovery during the 6 months. So we have 6 months to go to end year of 2023. Maybe you can share with us how Belanjawan 2023 has alleviate further from the impact of businesses, especially micro, small, medium enterprise, MSMEs, from the pandemic itself.
Okay, so first I'd like to talk about the impact of SMEs, right? Micro and medium, small, medium entrepreneurs, basically, right? That's what it means. Now, the impact of this group to the economy is really 90% of businesses in Malaysia and at least 70% of the labor force. So it's a very important segment of the economy, and I think the government has done a very good job in highlighting portions of this group that perhaps before were not really looked into. So if you look at this budget, you know, it seems to be ground up as opposed to top down. Whereas maybe before the budgets were top down, expecting the bigger SMEs to create jobs and trickle down economics, as they call it, hasn't really been very helpful. But I think this is the first time I'm seeing more of a bottom-up approach, right? And you're looking at also at categories of people that they have focused on, as opposed to very general provisions. So you're looking at, for example, women, you're looking at young people, you're looking at marginalized communities, and not just marginalized communities in West Malaysia, but also in Sabah and Sarawak. So I think they've paid a lot of attention to a very broad and large group of people, which are the micro SMEs and the smaller sort of SMEs. So I think that's good, yes.
So as you mentioned, start from the bottom out. So this is, we call it the first one, Madani Belanjawan. So in what ways the Madani Belanjawan specifically enhance the competitiveness for the local SMEs? I
think, firstly, okay, before I go into the benefits, I think what happens naturally from a ground-up approach here is I think it creates more liquidity in the market, right? So when you're assisting or you're helping the SMEs have more money in their pocket, what happens is, or the micro SMEs, which are a larger number compared to the bigger SMEs and so on and so forth, what happens is there's more liquidity in a larger pool of people in Malaysia, and I think that's very important, right? Yes. But then if we look at whether or not the key question really is, are these programs, I mean, on paper, as a theory, it works, whether it's really going to translate down to the ground, okay? Because, you know, if you look at some of the programs that they have, you know, you have, for example, credit guarantees, you have loans, you know, from BSN, SME Bank, and so on and so forth. But if you look at what happened during the pandemic, you found that a lot of these people, firstly, didn't know where to go, right? I mean, if you're let's say a mobilepreneur, like one of the categories in the budget, right? And you do Grab and you do deliveries and so on and so forth. Now, do you know where to go to get, do you know firstly that you have this allocation? That's number one. Number two is, do you know where to go? Which agency?
Next first step?
Yeah, which agency to go to? And number three is, have you done all your paperwork? You know, have you paid your taxes? Have you got your documents? Have you got a statement of account and things like
Definitely,
that?
Definitely, we want to ask where to start.
You know, so I think you're going to find that these are problems that need to be resolved before you can see the impact of what the government is really trying to do. Okay.
So maybe I want to touch one of the, say, the main initiative provided for the MSMEs, where the government's in the Belanjawan 2023 has agreed to lower the MSME's rate on taxable income for the first 150,000 ringgit from 17 to 15%, which is 2% minimized. This reduction is expected to save between 3,000 to 150,000 ringgit SME taxpayer. So maybe you can share with us what additional facilities or even support could be introduced to complement tax reductions and financial options for the SMEs.
Okay, I think firstly, you know, you have to say, I know during COVID I've been very critical of the way SMEs have been treated, but I think when things are, the government does things, we have to also appreciate, and say that, yes, it was very welcome. It is very welcome, especially for the lower tiers of, the SME market. And also we must note that this is, in the last proposed budget by Tengku Zafrul, before, it was actually not 15%, it was 10%. So that's 10%. So you actually had from 2,000 to 3,000 ringgit, right? Effectively, right? And that affects at least 150 to 200,000 businesses. That's a lot.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know it doesn't look like it's very big, but, when you are a micro, SME or whatever, that 3,000 actually helps to defray certain costs, right? So what are these costs that are basically impacting the lower end of the market? Actually, all across SME market is actually three things, right? Number one is the cost of doing business, right? Number two is labor costs, right? And number three is really, inflation, right? Everything has gone up, okay? Whether you like it or not, that's the reality of it. So in many ways, this amount helps to defray those costs. It doesn't mean that it's going to really do, but it is a big help, especially for the micro SMEs, right? But personally, I think it should have been done on a more wider scale. And what I mean by that is perhaps, so it works up to a threshold of maybe 600K. Okay. Right, so you have 150K, then it's 150 to 600, and then 600 you pay 24%, right? Above that, I believe it's 17%. I'm not too sure. But I think what could have been done is not really just in terms of increasing this small threshold, smaller group, which is the 15% where we are now. We could have pushed the threshold from 600,000 to maybe 1 million and increased it gradually. So instead of above 600,000, 24%, maybe we could have made that threshold to 1 million and have a medium sort of target of maybe 17%. I think that would have perhaps translated to something more effective. But even then, I think this is already
there may be a reason why we didn't reach to that level, maybe economic circumstances?
If you look at the numbers, 3,000 times 150,000 businesses, the overall scheme of things is not a lot of money that is being saved by the government or being given in a way in terms of tax, right? But, as I said, we're thankful, right? But perhaps it could have been done better. But I think the key point that we have to also understand is that before we start celebrating, is that you have to have made a profit before you get the tax reduction, correct? Now, a lot of people, and a lot of micro businesses especially, as resilient as they are, I think Malaysia is a fantastic country and it's a good example, even for third world countries, when you look at where we are today with all your penjajahs, people are out there, they're resilient, but it doesn't mean that they're doing well, okay? And so not many people may be making a profit, right? Don't forget, we just came out of pandemic, right? There's no more moratorium, there's no more COVID Act, protection. So a lot of these businesses are having to deal with old debts. Kena bayar balik, hutang untuk rental lah, hutang untuk whatever kan, suppliers semua kan.
Betul, banyak
dia. So you have to pay back these loans, right? And outgoings, correct? And then at the same time, you have to manage your cash flow to do your business, to make a profit. And in the meantime, before you can think about that, you have issues such as electricity, higher labor costs, higher inflation. So these are things that people are grappling with. So, whether they're actually going to benefit by making a profit and then having that tax reduced or that extra money, it's assumed, 3,000 ringgit is going to be made available for 150,000 or so micro SMEs. Again, you have to look at how effective that part is based on the fact of whether or not they're making a profit.
So we already passed half a year already for 2023, almost we end of June. And then maybe possibly for those MSMEs, for those who have not taken the opportunities that was presented in Belanjawan 2023, maybe you can share with us what are the steps for them to take to ensure they meet the qualifying criteria to get the support.
So, so again, this is the issue if you're going more on the micro SMEs and all of this, right? So if you look at one of the problems, of course, was documentation, okay? So I remember back during the COVID period, we were talking about a whole group of people that were left out of the bantuan. There was the policies and facilities that are being given by the government because, number one, they weren't registered as a tax user. They didn't pay income tax. They didn't have a SOXO. They didn't, they were off-grid, if you want to call it. So, so even whether you have tekun or you have whatever, you can't track these people because they may be, from the gig industry, they may be daily paid workers and things like that. And so they're not tracked in the system, okay? So I think the first thing we need to do is educate these people, So, even if you had a town hall, for example, in the kampong hall or whatever, and you got someone from SME Bank or BSN or someone to come and give a lecture or give a talk and say, listen, you need to get your books in order, you need to register for tax. Don't worry if you're not, you don't qualify, you don't pay the tax or you pay a very minimal amount, but you need all of this to be able to then access these things that the government wants to help you with, I think this sort of thing needs to go down, It's not just from on top we make these announcements.
Correct.
But I think we need to go down, and we already have training programs and all that under different,
Just
and I
need
think
to boost it up.
we need to boost it up, and we need to go down. As they say, turun padang lah. We need, if you want to talk about micro SMEs and you want to talk about this segment of the market, then you need to come down to educate them. You need to give them the support. You need to make sure that it is a one-stop shop. So let's say you want to help the usahawan Bumi Putra, for example, right? Put a stand in every masjid, for example, in the rural areas, in other areas, for example, give out this information, give them the help, put some care lines, for example, right? So these are perhaps things that we could do a little bit more.
Maybe we could share, my last question is about the collaboration of different stakeholders such as the government agencies, we can say the financial institution and the SME itself. So how can this collaboration enhance further the effectiveness of all of these initiatives?
I think that's a very good question, actually. You see, at the end of the day, what we've seen over the last several years and several budgets is the idea that all the government agencies, the banks, and to a certain extent, private lending as well through corporacies or through banks and credit guarantees and so on and so forth, right? So you see what the government is trying to do is really get everybody together to see how we can help to boost the economy and help the SMEs. But one thing that we need to remember is, we've had all these so-called digitalization policies. Malaysia is going to be fully digitalized and all of that. But on the ground, we're not.
The reality
is we're not, right?
Are we still far from reaching it?
And we, if it's so easy for someone to use, I'm not going to mention name, but something to buy goods using a phone, to buy goods from a tab from a 7-Eleven or upper, why are we so far away from doing the same thing at a pasar malam?
Understand?
You get what I mean? So I think people like SME Corp, which I know they're very good people in SME Corp, they're very good people in SME Bank, and I know 2 years ago we were talking about SME Corp actually building these type of infrastructures or these type of systems that could be integrated, for the penjajas, for the micro businesses, and I think maybe what we need to do is have that overall infrastructure, the payment structures, digitalized payment structures, whereby we are able to then say, I'm going to place my phone and buy something from the pasar malam using this digital process. Now, why is this good? This is good because you find that the government gives people, right? It helps people sometimes, right? So through when you have civil servants get a certain bonus, or the poor, the B40 get certain assistance. Now all of that can be translated into a digital system, into a card, and where this money is spent at the local pasar malams or the local mom and pop shops buying Malaysian goods, because that's what you can do. That money may not be good if you want to buy something from overseas, but it'll be good if you want to buy a tin of sardine or a bag of rice made in Malaysia.
Correct.
So I think we should be also paying attention to, when we say digitalizing, really giving them the support. You can't just say, okay, here's 3,000 ringgit, go figure out how you're going to get this digitalization in.
All right, I want to say thank you very much to Datuk David Gurupatam, the Industries Unite co-founder. Definitely, this is a very good insight. We have 6 months to go. We have, with your insight, all the SMEs out there will grab all the opportunities, growth, and even enhance their recovery. And everything will be uploaded in astrawani.com and all social media platforms. Baik, saya teruskan dengan laporan jiwa SME di mana ikan bekok atau ikan yang disalai sementara merupakan antara makanan yang mula terkenal di Kelantan. Dahulunya hanya dijual selepas digoreng di sebuah kedai makan di Tumpuan. Kini ikan bekok sudah melalui perubahan dalam penjenamaan, pembungkusan dan pemasaran menerusi media sosial.
Selepas nama ikan bekok mula terkenal di kalangan penggemar ikan masin di Kelantan, seorang usahawan Muhammad Khalifah Hussein dari Pasir Putih mula berkecimpung dalam penghasilan ikan bekok sejuk beku supaya ianya tahan lama dan dapat dipasarkan sehingga keluar Kelantan.
Produk saya ialah ikan bekok yang premium. Salah satunya glamour, siakak, jenahak, merah, kapu dan juga cencaru. Tercetusnya idea ni bila kita duduk dalam tekanan PKP lah, tak ada benda nak buat, habis modal, habis pitih. So kita ada satu kepandaian buat ikan bekok. Itu pun daripada turun-temurun. Cuma kita buat R&D sikit supaya ikan ni boleh diterima ramai, boleh dimakan oleh semua lapisan masyarakat.
Khalifah memulakan perniagaan ketika negara berdepan wabak COVID-19 di mana perintah kawalan pergerakan dilaksanakan sehingga menyebabkan perniagaannya mengalami kerugian. Namun kuasa media sosial membantu meningkatkan jualan apabila beliau memuat naik kandungan proses pembuatan dan pembungkusan ikan bekok.
Selain daripada Kelantan, kita supply ke kedai makan di Lembah Kelang. Ada 6 kedai makan di Lembah Kelang yang menggunakan produk Astro Fresh. 3 di Kelantan, 2 di Terengganu, 1 di Kuantan dan akan muncul di Putrajaya. Masa tu TikTok baru muncul. Saya adalah orang yang awal jugalah buat TikTok dengan follower tak ramai. Tapi bila kita jamu orang makan, orang pakai share dan orang pun share juga ke media sosial lain. Saya juga ada website. Nama website dia oceanfreshglobal.my. Satu hari saya amalkan 1 video saja. Lalu ni satu hari 2 video dan reach dia pun kadang-kadang beratus ribu orang tengok. Saya belanja orang makan dan orang share. Jadi share tu kohorama sampai satu video tu cecah 1.1 juta.
Ikan diperoleh dari nelayan tempatan antaranya ikan gelama, ikan cencaru. Namun selepas mendapat permintaan beliau terpaksa mengimport ikan dari Thailand dan sebahagiannya dari Sabah. Antara 1.5 hingga 2 tan sebulan ikan bekok dapat diedarkan ke seluruh negara. Jelasnya permintaan ikan bekok premium akan meningkat pada musim perayaan dan penghantaran melalui kurier dilakukan hampir setiap hari.
Sebelum nampak tu kau berkembang, saya perlukan satu platform lain lagi. Macam saya akan buat satu channel khas makan ikan bekok. Saya akan jelajah di setiap kedai-kedai ataupun premis yang kita supply. Kita akan bawa tim kita pergi makan, pergi review dan kita akan pergi ke kedai-kedai lain pun kita akan bawa produk kita bagi rasa. Saya suka terjah makan ikan bekok. Itu saya akan buat satu tajuk di bawah, terjah makan ikan bekok. Saya nak kenalkan ikan bekok ni bukanlah makanan kelas bawah. Dia juga adalah makanan kelas tengah dan kelas kayangnya. Sebab ikan kita adalah ikan premium.
Usahawan bawah bimbingan pertubuhan peladang ini turut mendapat sokongan daripada Institut Pendidikan dan Kemajuan Pertanian Malaysia MARDI dalam menjalankan pendidikan dan pembungkusan ikan bekok supaya tahan lama dan berkualiti.
Malaysia akan menjadi pemacu utama pertumbuhan perdagangan global dengan ekspor diunjur mencecah $425 bilion sekitar 2 trilion ringgit menjelang 2030 dengan kadar pertumbuhan tahunan sebanyak 6.8%. Demikian menurut laporan penyelidikan Standard Chartered bertajuk Future of Trade New Opportunities in High Growth Corridors yang mengunjurkan perdagangan global mencecah $32.6 trilion dengan kadar pertumbuhan 5% menjelang 2030. Sapura Energi Berhad mencatatkan untung bersih sebanyak RM146 juta bagi suku pertama berakhir 30 April 2023, peningkatan 58% berbanding RM92 juta yang dicatatkan bagi tempoh sama tahun lalu. Kumpulan itu mencatatkan keuntungan itu selepas meraih hasil sebanyak RM952 juta, peningkatan sederhana berbanding RM886 juta pada suku sama tahun lalu. Eco World Development Group Berhad berada di landasan tepat untuk mencapai sasaran jualan sebanyak RM3.5 bilion bagi tahun kewangan 2023. Public Investment Bank Berhad berkata prestasi kumpulan yang lebih baik daripada jangkaan hadir daripada segmen komersial dan perindustrian telah meningkatkan prajualan kumpulan kepada kira-kira RM2.4 bilion atau sudah berada pada 68.5% daripada sasaran jualan tahun kewangan 2023. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan astrawani.com serta dagannews.com.
Welcome home, my son.
Kepulangan yang ditunggu-tunggu.
Ayah Omar dah balik ya.
Tapi trauma menghantui. Bermulalah realiti berhadapan dengan 1001 cabaran.
Aku rasa dia benci kat aku ya.
Dia sama je lah macam mama kau. Dia pun perempuan.
Diorang tu lain macam sikit. Haluan dia lain. Haluan.
We got here gossip about you too, you know.
Apa kau merepek? Ni ya, orang nice macam kita orang. Ni biasa orang suka fitnah.
Masalah dunia sebenarnya.
Cinta Wrong Direction. Di Astro dan On Demand.
Jiwa SME oleh Astro Awani kembali lagi dan kali ini kami akan bertemu anda di lapangan khas untuk usahawan dan peniaga-peniaga kecil dan sederhana. Kami akan jelajah ke 5 lokasi pilihan di seluruh negara, membagikan dengan informatif dan menarik yang akan kami bawakan sepanjang tahun. Pastikan anda mendapat segala info dan update yang latest di sini.
Asking the tough questions is what we do every day here on Astro Awani. Catch me every weeknights at 10:30 p.m. across all Awani platforms.
Baik, DOSM telah mengeluarkan antara laporan terkini mengenai pelancongan domestik untuk tahun 2022. Saudara tentu sebelum saya kongsikan, mungkin anda di luar sana menjangkakan iaitu prestasi pelancongan domestik kita pada tahun lepas memang di tahap yang baik dan cemerlang berbanding tahun 2021 dan tahun pandemik COVID-19 2020. Saudara tentu saya akan kongsikan antara perincian dia bagaimana untuk kita lihat prestasi setiap tahun pelancongan domestik ini. Ini adalah antara yang dapat saksikan 3 data antara 3 kategori: pelawat domestik, bilangan perjalanan dan juga jumlah perbelanjaan. Kalau kita nak lihat setiap kategori ini, pelawat, bilangan dan jumlah perbelanjaan, kita dapat saksikan pada tahun 2022 ia telah menyaksikan peningkatan lonjakan terhadap jumlah dan prestasinya, di mana tahun 2022 ia telah mencatatkan pelawat domestik sejumlah 171.6 juta bilangan, iaitu peningkatan melonjak sebanyak 160% untuk pelawat domestik. Manakala untuk bilangan perjalanan pada tahun lepas juga telah melonjak naik, meningkat selebih 187% kepada 207.8 juta. Manakala jumlah perbelanjaan apabila pelawat naik, bilangan perjalanan naik, confirm sudah pasti jumlah perbelanjaan pun akan meningkat sebanyak 64.1 bilion ringgit, iaitu peningkatan 248% untuk jumlah perbelanjaan. Sudah tentu ini adalah kategori yang kita dapat saksikan secara kasarnya bagaimanakah jumlah dan bilangan dan perbelanjaan untuk pelancong domestik. Seterusnya mari kita saksikan 5 tujuan perjalanan pelawat domestik ini. Apakah sebab mereka melancong dalam iaitu di peringkat domestik? Di sini ada 5 sebab utama. Sudah tentu kita lihat sebab utama adalah disebabkan melawat saudara mara dan rakan-rakan sebanyak 33.7 Ini sudah tentu adalah punca utama kenapa, iaitu pelancongan domestik meningkat, kerana sejak beberapa tahun kita dilanda pandemik COVID-19 dengan sekatan perjalanan PKP, sudah tentu tidak ramai dapat melawat saudara mereka ataupun rakan-rakan mereka, dan sudah tentu mereka ambil peluang selepas PKP ini untuk berziarah iaitu keluarga mereka, saudara mereka. Dan keduanya adalah sebab yang kedua adalah 29.3%, hampir mencecah 30%. Dan kenapa kita punya pelancongan domestik meningkat adalah sebab kerana ramai yang suka shopping. So ini adalah antara 5 sebab kenapa tujuan perjalanan pelawat domestik ini. Yang ketiga adalah diikuti juga dengan percutian mengisi masa lapang, perjalanan insentif lain-lain, dan juga termasuk dengan perawatan perubatan penjagaan diri. Ini adalah tujuan utama perjalanan pelawat domestik. Dan kita lihat antara 5 negeri yang mempunyai pelawat domestik yang agak tinggi di sini adalah nombor 1, kita dapat saksikan Selangor dengan mencatatkan lebih 22% di sini. Diikuti juga dengan wilayah Persekutuan Kuala Lumpur, Sarawak, Perak dan Pahang. So tentu banyak negeri lain mempunyai keunikan mereka, tetapi ini adalah antara 5 negeri yang menjadi tumpuan utama untuk pelawat domestik pada tahun 2022 tahun lepas. Dan ini adalah, kita boleh cakap, jumlah juta, 22 juta, 16.9 juta. Seterusnya kalau kita saksikan komponen perbelanjaan pelawat domestik di sini adalah beberapa kategori untuk komponen, dan komponen pertama yang tertinggi sekali adalah komponen membeli belah sebanyak hampir mencecah 39%. Diikuti juga dengan komponen perbelanjaan. Kenapa mereka berbelanja semasa mereka melancong secara domestik adalah sebab mereka ingin shopping, tujuan pertama. Kedua, mereka ingin membeli makanan dan minuman, termasuk pembelian bahan api iaitu isi minyak, petrol. Diikuti juga dengan perkara lain termasuk penginapan iaitu sewa Airbnb, dan perbelanjaan oleh isi rumah, nak beli barang-barang rumah, pengangkutan, transportation, aktiviti lain, termasuk juga dengan perbelanjaan sebelum perjalanan pakej bayaran iaitu masuk dan tiket. Dan kalau kita lihat secara keseluruhan data siri masa, bagaimanakah jumlah perbelanjaan pelancongan domestik daripada tahun 2012 hingga tahun 2022, iaitu hampir 10 tahun kalau kita nak lihat. Dan kita tidak dinafikan bahawa kita dapat lihat iaitu prestasi pelancongan kita daripada tahun 2012 sehinggalah tahun 2019, ianya adalah dalam keadaan baik sebenarnya, positif yang kita boleh saksikan. Namun pada tahun yang dilanda pandemik COVID-19 pada tahun 2022, bukan sahaja iaitu ekonomi tutup, termasuk juga dengan pelancongan sempadan kita tutup, di mana kita dapat lihat pelancongan domestik kita menurun. Ia sangat menyusut pada waktu kita dilanda krisis ketika itu. Di sini kita dapat saksikan pada 2020 ia telah menyusut sebanyak negatif 60%. Ikuti juga tahun 2021 dan 2022 kita sudah masuk fasa pemulihan, dan sehingga kini fasa pemulihan kita agak kukuh. Pada tahun 2022 kita lihat iaitu pemulihan yang luar biasa berbanding tahun 2020 waktu COVID-19, dan pada tahun 2021 di mana ia telah mencatatkan sebanyak 248.1% peningkatan. So, sudah tentu bergerak ke hadapan untuk kita kenal pasti bagaimanakah kita dapat mempertahankan angka ini atau kita dapat meningkatkan lagi iaitu jumlah pelancongan domestik Malaysia 2022 sehinggalah pada tahun ini. Dan sudah sedia untuk mengulas lebih lanjut adalah Datuk Dr. Khalid Harun, merupakan Presiden Persatuan Agensi Pelancongan Malaysia MATA. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Datuk kerana sudi meluangkan masa bersama kami. Sudah tentu seperti yang menurut laporan DOSM juga, mereka mengatakan iaitu pelawat domestik Malaysia naik 33.7% tahun ke tahun dan pada suku tahun pertama. Jadi manakala perbelanjaan pelawat domestik seperti yang kita lihat tadi melonjak 64.1 bilion ringgit, agak tinggi pada tahun lepas. Kita dapat saksikan banyak strategi yang telah diambil untuk menggalakkan lebih ramai lagi pelawat domestik serta corak perjalanan pelawat domestik kita dah lihat berubah, is changing sepanjang tempoh pemulihan ini. Jadi Datuk boleh kongsikan apakah langkah-langkah yang perlu diambil untuk kita mempertahankan pertumbuhan dalam pelancongan domestik pada masa depan?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih. Pertamanya untuk mempertahankan kelangsungan supaya penambahan pelancongan domestik ini, pertamanya saya fikir rata-rata di masa kini kurangnya promosi. Jadi saya ingin menyatakan di sini, apabila kurangnya promosi itu, maka sudah tentunya kesedaran bagi rakyat Malaysia ini untuk melancong ke tempat-tempat yang difikirkan terbaik untuk mereka melancong sudah tentunya kurang kedatangan itu. Jadi dengan itu saya sarankan kepada setiap negeri jangan tumpukan kepada tourism Malaysia saja untuk mempromosikan tempat-tempat destinasi pelancongan. Diharapkan saya rasa di atas belanjawan tiap-tiap negeri itu dia mempunyai satu rupa bentuk belanjawan yang mana khusus untuk pelancongan. Maka diperbanyakkan lagi promosi ini. Yang keduanya, untuk mereka ini melawat di tempat-tempat yang terkenal lah. Kita pasti tahu bahawa kemudahansampaian itu perlu. Pertamanya kita tiap-tiap negara-negeri itu mestilah menyediakan macam mana kemudahansampaian untuk melancong, untuk datang ke tempat-tempat mereka. Pertamanya kalau sekiranya saya tengok di bajet yang 2023 itu, kerajaan telah menentukan untuk infrastruktur pelancongan. Maka ini diperhebatkan lagi lah infrastruktur pelancongan kerana ini perlu. Yang keduanya dari segi transportasi, maknanya perjalanan mereka nak datang ke sana dan mereka mestilah mudah cara sampai. Pertamanya dia mesti ada jalan raya yang cantik ya. Yang keduanya kalau misalnya ada airport, dia mesti mempunyai airport. Seperti contohlah macam Selangor, kenapa ditinggikan, dia ada 2 airport, satu di Subang, satu di KLIA. Begitu juga di Penang, dia ada kemudahan airport yang bagus. Begitu juga di Kedah, dia ada 2 airport, satu di Langkawi, satu di Alor. Dan Johor, Sabah seperti yang dikatakan, saya rasa kalau Sabah ini penting untuk mendapatkan pelancong yang lebih ramai lagi. Begitu juga dengan Sarawak. Jadi yang ketiganya, tiap-tiap negeri itu mestilah di samping mempromosikan, mereka juga mesti menambah banyak lagi tempat-tempat destinasi pelancongan. Seperti di Selangor, kita nampak ya, kenapa Selangor itu tinggi? Kerana mereka sudah menampilkan produk-produk baru. Jadi orang-orang kita ni ingin merasai apakah yang terkini dalam satu-satu negeri itu. Seperti ambil contohlah, macam baru-baru ni saya tengok Splash Mania Park tu kan, itu menarik ramai pelancong di Selangor tu. Kerana kemudahan sampainya senang dan infrastruktur untuk sampai sana senang dan juga produk ini terbaik. Kerana semua lapisan masyarakat, kalau pendek kata tadi, ada family untuk boleh berkunjung ke sana. Jadi seluruh family itu boleh pergi ke sana kerana ia menyediakan tanpa usia di semua lapisan masyarakat, setiap lapisan umur boleh datang ke sana. Jadi maknanya ini baik untuk family lah. Dan seterusnya saya rasa macam tambang lah, pendek kata macam tambang kapal terbang, Kuching nak pergi ke Kota Kinabalu, nak pergi ke Langkawi, nak pergi ke apa. Ini sudah tentunya tambang kapal terbang ini memberi satu impak ya yang kuatlah kepada pelancong. Kalau sekiranya tambang ini, kalau sekiranya frekuensi flight ini boleh dipertingkatkan lagi, saya rasa ini satu cara yang mana ramai orang akan melancong ke Sabah dan juga ke Sarawak. Dengan adanya banyak frekuensi dan juga harga tambang kapal terbang ini dah turun, maka itu lebih ramai lagi orang bersedia. Jadi dia mengambil persediaan itu daripada sekarang lah. Dia akan, orang nak melancong ni, dia akan orang kata memprogramkan di mana dia nak pergi di masa-masa cuti akan datang. Oleh yang demikian, disarankan juga kepada hotel-hotel, tempat-tempat penginapan ni, jangan pula mengambil untuk menaikkan harga lah, mengambil kesempatan untuk menaikkan harga kerana kita sudah nampak sekarang ni untuk kelangsungan pelancongan ini berapa tetapkan harga itu supaya mungkin satu hari nanti apabila sudah sampai masanya untuk diubah semula harga itu, maka itu akan memudah carakanlah bagi mereka-mereka yang nak melancong ke tempat-tempat seperti di Sabah, Sarawak, Langkawi dan tempat-tempat yang mana adanya kapal terbang pesawat penerbangan pergi ke sana. Jadi ini adalah satu cara yang kita perlu ingat ya. Begitu juga selain di pertambang tadi, kemudian sampai ini seperti rail ya, atau kereta api. Jadi kita ada mempunyai kereta api yang sekarang ni. Jadi oleh kerana itu kita mesti gunakanlah kemudahan ini. Pendek kata daripada East Coast ke barat Malaysia ni, semula daripada Johor sampai ke Kelantan sana, begitu juga daripada Kuala Lumpur nak pergi ke utara dan ke selatan. Mereka ini boleh menggunakan kereta api untuk melancong. Jadi saya rasa kemudahan kereta api itu mestilah dipertingkatkan, dia punya infrastruktur itu mesti diperbaiki. Saya ingin jelaskan di sini kita sudah jauh ketinggalan dari segi persiapan, dari segi kemudahan, dari segi harga, tambah pula dengan jatuhnya ringgit ini, jadi maknanya kos kita untuk melancong ini sudah naik. Maka dengan itu kita perlulah mengambil berat tentang harga kos ini supaya boleh meletakkan tempat untuk didatangi pelancong ini harganya tidak begitu tinggi. Seperti contohlah macam di Melaka, kata ya, Melaka ini terkenal dengan banyak tempat, begitu juga dengan budaya makanan mereka, banyak makanan laut yang jadi ini perlu kita pertingkatkan lagi. Saya rasa dari segi promosi tadi kita kenalah ikut trend terkini, bermakna kita mesti menggunakan teknologi, mesti menggunakan digital. Jadi maknanya apa juga cara yang kita boleh promosikan produk kita perlu ikut. Jadi dengan adanya bajet-bajet yang perlu dibantu oleh kerajaan untuk memudah carakan mereka ini mendapat kunjungan yang bertambah, maka perlulah kita membuat bentuk promosi yang berlainan ikut trend sekarang ya. Jadi saya ingatkan juga untuk menambahkan lagi kerancakan pelancong untuk mengunjungi tempat-tempat masing-masing. Mesti juga diadakan event, acara-acara yang terkemuka yang boleh mendatangkan banyak pelancong ke negeri itu. Jadi kita tengok banyak-banyak tempat sudah mempunyai kemudahan seperti dewan dan juga tempat-tempat penginapan, makanan, dengan acara-acara yang begitu menarik untuk menarik ramai orang lagi datang ke tempat mereka. Begitu juga ni tempat-tempat penginapan tadi macam hotel-hotel, mereka ini sudah tentunya bersedia untuk memberi langgan yang terbaik. Jadi dia akan menambah baik tempat mereka, mungkin menambahkan apa lagi perkara yang yang disenangi oleh pelancong untuk datang menginap di tempat-tempat mereka. Bukannya dari segi harga saja, tetapi mungkin dari segi budaya kerja pelancongan itu sendiri. Ya.
Seperti yang Datuk cakap tadi bahawa apa yang kita perlu tingkatkan adalah promosi pemasaran terhadap iaitu tempat-tempat pelancongan ini, terutama domestik ini, termasuk juga dengan tidak ketinggalan terhadap penyedia pelancongan ini, bahawa mereka harus mengambil kira mempertimbangkan setiap aspek dari segi iaitu penyediaan perkhidmatan, daripada segi harga yang ditawarkan, untuk pastikan bahawa setiap pelancong yang hadir dan melancong ke situ iaitu mendapat manfaat sekaligus dapat nikmatinya sepanjang mereka melancong itu. Dan sudah tentu Datuk pun sudah menjawab semua persoalan saya pada kali ini. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada Datuk Dr. Khalid Baharu, merupakan Presiden Persatuan Agensi Pelancongan Malaysia MATA.
Petronas is pleased to partner with CERAWeek by S&P Global to co-create Energy Asia 2023 as a flagship strategic platform to advance solutions and develop clear targets and policies.
Roadmaps will be explored, debated and defined.
It's a question of technology, it's a question of finance, and it's a question of innovation.
See you at Energy Asia 2023 in Kuala Lumpur.
Di Energy Asia 2023 ini, antara fokus utama adalah berkenaan dengan selain daripada kita bercakap transisi tenaga, kalau kita bercakap berkenaan dengan tenaga boleh baru dan pelbagai lagi, amat penting sekali untuk kita teliti berkenaan dengan ekosistem, kerana ianya merupakan satu ekosistem yang menyeluruh, melibatkan dari segi dananya, melibatkan dari segi pekerja, melibatkan dari segi kepakaran. Banyak perkara-perkara yang perlu kita perincikan dalam kita beralih kepada tenaga yang boleh baharu, dalam kita melalui proses transisi dan sebagainya. Jadi untuk hari ini saya bersama dengan salah seorang panel yang terlibat di dalam Energy Asia 2023 adalah saudara Ahmad Kashfi Alwi, Senior Vice President Ecosystem Development. Kashfi, thank you for being with us today. Sure. Maybe first of all, maybe you can share some key strategies in terms of empowering and nurturing emerging startups in the sustainability sector.
Sure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Now, when we talk about nurturing startups, first we need to look at the success rate of startups, or the failure rate of startups rather. Now, according to data, we know that 90% of startups fail in the first 3 years of its operations, right? And so we need to look at how do we assist as a government agency in developing strong fundamentals for the startups to thrive, right? So there are 5 main fundamentals that we will look at. Now, first is vision. We want to see how founders need to build resilience in terms of their mindset in building something which is huge, something which is enduring and lasting, and have this mindset that would change the world to solve inefficiencies in markets and so on and so forth. Secondly, we assist them in developing a strong product proposition, because we know that it is imperative for startups to be able to build products that will be able to translate or transmit rather innovation to their target customers. And secondly, thirdly, is more on the performance, that startups need to have a clear path towards profitability. And fourthly, in terms of business model, startups need to have a sustainable business model for them to thrive in this ever-changing environment. And last but not least, to have a strong pitch, not just to their investors, but also to their customers, because we know that customers, they don't buy into the products or solutions per se, but more on their innovations or their purpose of being. Right? So speaking of sustainability or sustainability-driven startups, so under the aegis of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation and also the Ministry of Finance, we're looking at providing various platforms for startups in building their resilience and also their capacity in those areas. So I strongly believe that if we were to double down on our efforts in providing these sort of programs, we will give our startup founders a fighting chance to thrive.
Ash, maybe you can share in terms of the challenges or some sort of like the biggest challenges because of per se that Malaysia, the market is just about like 30 millions of market, but compared to Indonesia. So of course, in terms of startups, and if we want to go beyond or become unicorn, of course we need to look further in terms of to widen our markets. So maybe in terms of challenges and also by emerging startups in terms of sustainability.
Sure. So we looked at data, and we found out that there are various challenges, of course, that are faced by startups and also stakeholders in the local startup ecosystem. First being is lack of corporate sector participation. We need more participation from the private sector to pump prime the local startup ecosystem. Secondly, talent. We lack the necessary and relevant talent to build innovative solutions. In fact, we are losing talent to other markets. Thirdly, our current policies and regulations are not startup friendly for our startups to thrive, right? Fourthly, we lack the necessary go-to-market channels for our startups to scale. And to your point, right, to explore beyond borders and not just focusing on, the local market. Exactly, because like you said, we only have like a population of 32.8 million, I think, a very small market. So we need to address that, and so we are forging strategic partnerships with our counterparts in other markets. In fact, last week we had a conversation at ASEAN level on how to build regional programs that would attract startups from other countries to come here to Malaysia and co-create value, and also to export our innovation outside of Malaysia. And last but not least, we see that there's a challenge in providing them with a ideation platform, right, for our startups to build on their ideas to become sustainable ventures. I know that there are a lot of deep conversations that's happening at the moment. Also, we are gathering data and insights on how do we improve on how do government agencies such as ourselves support startups in the short run, mid-term, and also the long run.
You mentioned about challenges, maybe in terms of how Cradle's initiative in order to counter that challenges or to make sure that we can see the latest unicorn in Malaysia maybe in 2-3 years.
Well, first of all, we have one unicorn, which is Karsam. And so, from Cradle Fund's perspective, we launched an initiative called My Startup. So the My Startup initiative consists of several components. First being an ideation-based track, where we run national-level hackathons that allows startups to work closely with the government agencies and also ministries to solve real-world problems of our rakyat, right? So that's one. Number two is capacity building programs, or rather enrichment programs, where we match mentors with startup founders, and also we place interns into startups because we fully understand it is a very challenging feat for founders to attract and also retain talent. We also have a pre-accelerator program, a program which is geared to more early stage startups in refining their minimum viable products and also to test their early business models. And we have an accelerator program geared towards more mature startups looking to fundraise. And at the heart of it all, we have this portal called mystartup.gov.my, which aims to be the definitive directory for all startups, investors, service providers and government entities.
All under one rooftop.
All under one roof on My Startup. And we're starting to see results, actually. Just to highlight, for example, there's this one company called Logistic, which was recently acquired by an Australian company for 11.3 million USD, right, in less than 2 years of its operations. We have Troopers, a gig economy platform, which is in the midst of getting acquired by an India-based company for an undisclosed amount. We have 6 of our startups who have received angel investments and a lot more of these success stories, which we hope to tell more about, in the coming future.
Ash, maybe your thoughts on how can investors play a role in empowering and also nurturing sustainability startups, and what factors do they consider when evaluating investment, especially investment opportunities in the sector?
Right. So we are not short of capital or funding in this region, right? But I think the challenge for VCs is basically to identify and invest in startups with very strong fundamentals, right? And I know that startup founders are smarter these days. They're not just looking for money, but they're just looking at they're also looking for smart money. And when I say smart money, I meant by affluent investors with the necessary entrepreneurial experience, with the necessary knowledge and also connections to further develop these entrepreneurs, especially in the sustainability space, because we know that sustainability or the ESG agenda is, well, not quite new, but it is a developing topic of conversations, right? But I could see trends that more VCs are starting to invest in and support impact-driven startups in that space. So it'll be interesting to see in the short term to the mid-term, and also building for the long run as well.
Lastly, Ash, maybe you can, your thoughts on how maybe in terms of governments and policymakers create an enabling environment for the growth of sustainability startups.
Right. Now, first of all, we need to be clear on our role. As government agencies, we are facilitators, right? We facilitate the connections and also the conversations with all of the stakeholders in the startup ecosystem. And so our role is also to gather input and insights from the rakyat in general, in particular from startup founders, builders, and also investors, to help us to design and establish better policies and regulations which are startup friendly, right? And also we want to see how we can leverage on the power of this rapid innovation to accelerate the digitalization of government agencies, right? One such example is with this national level hackathon that we ran for a couple of years called My Hackathon, right? Which allows our startups to work closely with various government agencies and also ministries, like I've mentioned earlier. But I think if you look at the current conversations with the various ministries, we are now starting to embrace innovation and the power of leveraging the value capture activities from the startups in Malaysia. So, yeah.
Of course, we look forward for more VCs, and in terms of more unicorn after this, kita, especially bila kita tengok Indonesia ada kopi kenangan, and just a coffee then can become unicorn. So satu perkara yang cukup inspired. Terima kasih sekali lagi Encik Ahmad Kashfi Alwi, Senior Vice President Ecosystem Development Cradle Fund, berkongsi pandangan berkenaan dengan perkara ini. Okey, sudah tentu banyak lagi laporan menarik akan kami bawakan seiring dengan persidangan Energy Asia 2023 yang berlangsung selama 3 hari di KLCC ini. Saya Haris Ashraf Hasnan. Assalamualaikum, salam hormat.
Kejutan demi kejutan.
Mega Spontan akan menggila.
Saya ganti Datuk Jalal.
Dia telefon, ini aku telefon.
Jangan marah.
Hidung dia besar. Dia nak bercakap, kita tengok. Anak bucik tak jenis kejuk-kejuk lain.
Kejutan istimewa hanya di Mega Spontan di Astro Warna dan Astro Go.
Hajat yang tidak kesampaian.
Labbaik Allahumma labbaik.
Orang tua tu mana ada duit?
Dia nak sangat pergi tu.
Kau nak sangat tolong ayah? Tolong lah.
Sebab dia tak sihat. Kalau mati kat sana, siapa susah?
Biar ayah mati kat sana pun tak apa.
Kafankan Aku Dalam Ihram, 30 Jun, 10 malam di Astro Oasis dan Astro Go.
Bersediakah anda untuk aksi terhebat di sepak takraw? Saksikan jago terunggul negara dengan lebih dekat setiap Jumaat, Sabtu dan Ahad. Sokongan anda menyemarakkan lagi semangat mereka. Ini milik kita.
Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la syarika lak labbaik.
15 minit setiap hari bersama kami membicarakan perihal Haji 2023. Bersiaran pada 10 pertama Zulhijjah. Bermula 21 Jun hingga 30 Jun. Pastikan anda bersama kami di Astro Awani dan Astro Oasis.
Asking the tough questions is what we do every day here on Astro Awani. Catch me every weeknights at 10:30 p.m. across all Awani platforms.